and it's one of my favourite songs. The lyrics, okay, I'm not too hot on them, but the music and the way it's sung is very, very, very amusing and very, very good and very catchy, and it appears in this movie, The Full Monty. Anyway, that's a long way round of saying that it looks as if the Full Monty is going to be at the White Hart Hotel, and that there is suitable outrage beginning to rise because as this one correspondent said, is well, the 1980s is they did this thing, the male strippers were very, very popular. It'd be very interesting to see how many people turn up at the White Hart for it, because perhaps that'll tell us something about what is actually prevalent in our society in terms of mores and what we enjoy and what we don't enjoy. I actually live around the corner from the White Hart. I shall pop in from time to time and see how sales are going, because to me it's highly amusing. To others it's offensive. To others it's going to be a night out of fun. But whatever, it looks as if it's going to take place, unless we get a mass protest, which is so much a part of our lives nowadays. But that's at the White Hart, and sometime at the beginning of May. You'll have to look up the details yourself. I'm not here to promote it, just to say that it's going on, and I find it very amusing. So there's strippers at the White Hart, and male strippers at that. Woo! The interesting thing, I think, about the change in the way that we look at things is that we seem to go up and down in terms of morality. We talk about the 60s, when anything went, and it is. I think that what was the little ditty that went around? London swings like a pendulum do. And it was a swinging city, and then of course it calmed down, and the centre of it is still there. The place just off Regent Street, which was the market that got it going. Name will come back to me in a moment, but it just sells clothes now. I mean, you go in there, there's nothing spectacular about it, nothing special. It reflects the attitudes of people today. I think one of the things that you have to be very careful about is, and what we tend to do is to laugh at the way that other people lived 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, because it was reflective of the conditions, it was reflective of the educational system, it was reflective of a whole host of things. And because it's different today, doesn't mean that we're any better or any worse than what happened all those years ago. Basically what we are is we're different. And if only we could come to grips with the fact that we are different, we wouldn't have half the problems with ethnicity and isms in our society. We're different, and many of us are different, and perhaps that's something that we're forgetting and our leaders are forgetting. Anyway, let me say this. Somebody has phoned me and said, you know, Keith, we're quite interested in the way that you poke around and you have a go at various people, and I suppose really that I've become the conscience of our community, or join those who are a conscience of our community, such as Lewis I. And they said, but I think that, you know, once in a while we should tell you something that's good. And this person said that a couple of nights ago they had to call their local surgery in Lewis with an emergency at about 10 o'clock at night, and they did so, and that even though it was a press 1, press 2 situation, it very quickly got them through to somebody who was able to talk through what the problem was, and elected to send a paramedical team and dispatch them. And they said they were there within 10 to 15 minutes. They spent a good amount of time with the person who was ill, that they did a very thorough job, that they were pleasant, they were efficient, that they left notes just in case anybody needed to carry on from where they left off. They gave the advice about whether the person should go to hospital or not. They were very, very efficient. And as a consequence, I was asked, every time I say that there are things wrong with the NHS, which there are patently, there are some very good things when you get down to the individual crews and the individual people that are looking after us at the coalface. So I'm very happy to say, well done, NHS. Well done, the paramedical team, which services Lewis, and long may they keep up that sort of service, and long may they have working in their ranks the sort of polite people that I'm told turned up to look after the sick person. And it all ended well. The sick person is now apparently is better and okay, back on her feet and raring to go. So there we are. I'm quite happy to do that. Now, I think, what shall we do? I play a lot of music from Bensound. Not only do they make their music free to people such as ourselves who never make a penny out of what we're doing, but they also have some pretty lively music that is not heard elsewhere. So, after my little tirade there, and it's 21 minutes past 6 o'clock in Lewis, in East Sussex, which is broadly on the south coast, let's hear something from Bensound, and it's called Going Higher. So let's see what it sounds like. Going Higher from Bensound. These are some of the things that you won't hear elsewhere, and some of it is very pretty, very calming, and beautifully put together and beautifully composed. So that's one thing that we can do, is we give a chance to those people who aren't heard normally on mainstream, an opportunity to actually be heard on Rouser Radio in Lewis and the surrounding tiny towns in East Sussex in the United Kingdom, and hopefully one or two people in Lewis, Delaware, county of East Sussex. I hope that some of you are listening in as well, because we would love to have you. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to chat to you. In fact, what we'll try and do is to arrange through wonderful and lovely Melissa Conti in New York to do that. Melissa, we want you to get well. She hasn't been well. She's on the mend, I'm happy to say, because she's a very bright and bouncy, and as you've seen from some of the photographs on Mirador television, a very good-looking and beautiful lady, and we want her back on track, and hopefully she'll have her own program before too long. And the stresses of being ill and also doing another job, of course, as nobody gets rich on this radio station, and we will see her back in harness before too long. But anyway, a couple of things before we go. Mick Symes, who runs several of the groups on Facebook and does Lewis Present, has reminded everybody that there is a referendum pretty soon on the Lewis the Lewis plan, which is going to dictate the future of the town, I suppose our future, over the next 10 to 15 years. And he's put it up on that website, on that group, Lewis Present, and has invited anybody who wants to actually take a little read of it to take a read of it, because he, like a lot of people, are very concerned that we go and we vote and we have no idea what we're voting for, and then we complain about it once we've found out what we've done. So do take Mick's invitation, go into Lewis Present and take a look at the wording and the meaning of the Lewis plan, the referendum coming up in a couple of weeks' time. It would be nice to keep on saying nice things, wouldn't it? Somebody has said, why are there in Lewis, in Southover High Street, 3 separate roadworks going on all at the same time? Well, do you know, the strange thing is that I remember, perhaps a decade ago, that there was a big song and dance that now all roadworks were going to be come under a computer, so that people could make sure that they weren't digging up the road on one occasion and then 5 minutes later coming back and digging it all up again for something different, and that it would plan carefully where roadworks were taking place, and then they could let the authorities know in transport and make sure that cars could avoid, and so on and so forth. Well, a bit of it is going on, I suppose, but that sort of thing doesn't seem to have seeped through to the road department around this part of the world, because, as this correspondent says, 3. And not only is it disrupting traffic, but the howl of machinery and the drills and the shattering and so on and so forth is driving them mad. Mad by 3. So if that computer system does exist, and there's a big song and dance about it at one time, then let's put it into operation, because we seem to let computers do absolutely everything else for us. So what were we talking about this morning? Well, let's keep an eye on leadership. Leadership in crisis, from top to bottom, and being demonstrated very ably by the senior people in Westminster, those who have been politicians for most of their life and are behaving in a most unseemly manner. We're not getting any leadership from them, and that's who we should expect leadership from. And if lower down at county, district and parish levels, the people who are in authority emulate them, who can blame them? But if it's wrong at the top, it's wrong at the bottom. Enough. We time, I think, to go, and we'll go out with our usual Ben sound, Endless Motion, which I love, and I hope that you'll get used to it. Toodle bit.